Esther, you're
Yep.
online.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm seeing all of you streaming in from all parts of the world. It's absolutely so moving. I am moved anyway. I'm so glad you're all here, and we're going to wait a couple minutes just for all of you to join us.
Esther, can you close the YouTube,
YouTube.
the Chrome?
I did. I did. I did, Nick. What am I not doing correct?
All right, we're good to go.
We're good to go?
Yes.
All right. Starting all over, but no less moved to see all of you streaming in here. And we are going to be talking about love, loss, loneliness, and a pinch of humor, because without the humor, we're not going to survive this thing. You know, I'm going to give you a couple more moments. Tell me where you're from. Tell me where you're at. Tell us anything you need us to know about you. We have a unique capacity to connect, actually, across borders, across time zones. And we are going to experience that as we engage in this conversation together. I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts about this. I haven't stopped thinking about what are we going to do with our relationships, what are the things that we need to do to survive, and what are the opportunities that are probably at our doorstep, with all kinds of things that we didn't know were possible. So hi everyone, and what is this workshop? We, as I was just saying, as partners, as people, as human beings, we'll need to find all kinds of resources to survive this pandemic. And but I also want us to look at what are the opportunities here to be creative, to learn, and to evolve in our relationships. This is going to be 4 parts. It will happen every week at this time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here where I am in New York. But it will be all over the world, a different hour for you on Facebook Live and Zoom. And I encourage you to RSVP via estherperel.com/lockdown. estherperel.com/lockdown. Just register in advance with us. Now, how does it work? Where do you watch and how do you submit your questions? So you can submit your questions right here on the live chat, or by making a comment under the recording once the videos are archived. And why am I beginning this workshop series on this topic? I think we're trying to make sense of a lot of things, of the sanitary crisis, of the economic devastations, of the massive disruptions that are taking place in our lives. This pandemic will be called the Great Adaptation. The generation of the Great Depression, this one is the Great Adaptation. But from the point of view of relationships, which is where I locate myself, with that same credo all the time, that it is the quality of our relationships that determines the quality of our lives, both at home and at work, ever more so now. Our lives during these times, where we are actually beginning to understand that all our roles, worker, partner, parent, child, friend, teacher, CEO, and CFO of our personal lives, they're happening in the same place. I have been sitting in the one chair in my kitchen or in my little room, and I'm experiencing everything in one location. Usually I leave to see my friends, I leave to go to work, I leave to go and exercise, to take a walk in nature, to spend time with my children or with my partner. This is like delocalized, everything bleeding into each other. And for many of you, it is the kitchen table as well. So for 3 weeks, I've been sitting at the same chair here, and here's my multiple roles. I am the CEO of my startup. I am a therapist to all my patients. I am a supervisor to my supervisees and to my colleagues. I'm a friend to all the people in the world that I am connected with. I'm a mother to my 2 sons. I'm a wife to my husband. I'm a woman in my 60s, and that means I am part of the risk category and I won't make it past the triage in the emergency room. I am also a companion to myself, and all this under one roof. That is really a very new experience. That's it's something that I have never known, none of us have ever known. And I have also been hearing from all of you. And what I've learned from you is that you may be the child who's worried about your parents, or whose parents are worried about you. You may be the sibling who's worried about your brother or sister who are not as fortunate as you, or who you know have been ill, or who you know are more vulnerable. You're the partner, someone who is either too close to you at this moment or not close enough. You're either, longing for more connection and more physical proximity, or you just are begging for some space. You're the partner or the friend or the family member of a healthcare provider who is trying to stay away from you because they've become a walking pathogen in their efforts to help and take care of everybody else. And you are the parent who's now teaching to 1, 2, 3 children math, English, French, every language under the sun. And sometimes actually realizing that you've been missing your children, that you actually were not home enough, that you were so much on the road all the time, and that actually it's very moving to spend much more time with them. And you sometimes are the one that has been dating somebody for just a few weeks and you find yourself now living together, or the one who has actually just separated recently and is going through all of this in a completely new configuration in your life that you had never predicted. Some of you are finding yourself back in your childhood bedroom, and I don't have to tell you how many of us, when we go home, we suddenly regress. And you may be the marathon runner who last week was still running up and down and can barely go upstairs at this moment. This tsunami is beginning to hit. And as it is beginning to surround us, we are realizing that more and more people around us are sick or are dying or have died. And this reality is what we are all breathing at this moment. So I'm just going to take a deep breath with all of you before I even continue talking. So this is who this is all going to be for during these next 4 weeks. And what is the goal of our workshop? The goal is that we have to learn to live with this new normal, and in this new normal of our relational life, we are going to be creating boundaries and we are going to be dissolving boundaries. It's both and it's about reconciling all the parts of us. How are we going to turn our relational differences into resources? That is my question all the time. People are experiencing more tension, more fragmentation, more impulsivity, more irritability, and more love and more connection, all of it. But the beauty of it is going to be really finding a way to turning our differences into resources. We all have different coping mechanisms when it comes to acute stress, different ways of processing what is going on. And I want to go into that for a moment because I think it's really, really essential, actually. Some of us, when we experience acute stress, become highly logical. We become problem solvers. We go practical. We hoard, we stockpile, we buy things, and the other people make fun of us, or the other people think, how can you be trying to fix things now when the world is falling apart? One is logical, but the other person may go much more into the emotional realm and into the articulation of the feelings. What's interesting here is that while our coping styles may be very different, the feelings that underlie them, the sadness, the stress, the loss, the powerlessness, those feelings are not different. One person may experience the desire to create order, to start organizing things, because a sense that order on the outside is going to create order on the inside. And when they start to do all of that, They experience a sense of order as a bulwark against chaos, against a feeling of powerlessness, about a loss of control. And so projects, for some of us, is intensely helpful. It's not your style, maybe, but it is not needing to be the same as you. It's okay to realize that within the same space, within the same family, within the same group of people, we have different coping styles. And language matters here a great deal, because we have been talking about social distancing, and I prefer to call it actually physical distancing, so that we can actually connect, but my colleague and friend Alexandra Salomon was talking about how, while we call this new living situation confinement, lockdown, quarantine, shelter in place, for some people, this may also actually be cocooning, or it may even be connecting safely. So I think playing with the language, because the language shapes the experience. And if we actually call it cocooning, which I've heard quite a few people say, I've actually been home and I don't really miss it. I don't feel like I have to be traveling as much or being out as much. I'm okay actually being put. And that is an expression of cocooning. That is not just an expression of lockdown or quarantine. Some of us want food, information, give me more, but some of us just really need at some point to know enough is enough. I can't take in another piece of information. And if, some of you may want to send your articles, your videos, your charts to someone else. It's okay. It's okay to say that's your style. It's not mine. That's not the way I am doing this. I think actually, I'm going to tell it to you from my own experience. My husband is still making decisions for the future. He's thinking about pieces in the house that he wants to do, changes he wants to make, renovations, and I'm thinking, like, who can think about this? I am just trying to go day by day. I'm the anxiety factor in the relationship, but I need him to think about the future. I need him to still have possibilities. I know it helps him to have forward looking. And he probably needed me earlier on in order to really tell him, we need to change things, and we need to get those masks and the sanitizers and all of that stuff that in the beginning we thought were really just going to protect us. And they still do, but it's a lot more complex than this, You will notice that some of you like the routine. You want the roles and the rules and the structure to remain in place. You want it for yourself. You want it for the relationships. You want it for your children if you have children in the house. You want to keep your schedules as best as you can. And some of you have gone into emergency mode. What rules are we talking about? What schedule? But these two are really two sides of the same coin. They're part of how we are maneuvering these multiple roles in these multiple aspects to our relationships all at once. They feel like opposites, but they need not be opposites. They can be really complementary. They can be complementary instead of polarizing, instead of one person seeing the other person's coping style as a threat to you. It's true that if I plan long term, I am communicating to the other person, I fear that this danger is going to go on for a long time, and it may trigger anger or fear in the other person. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't do this because you are afraid. You need to be able to tell me that you are afraid. I think that in my case, what makes our differences a resource is that we end up balancing each other out. And balancing each other out is not a 50-50. It just means he needs me and I need him. That's the interdependence of forces here. I have no illusion that I am right or that he's right. I have a clear idea that in a moment of prolonged uncertainty like this, you need both. You need the experience of imminent danger meeting the experience of unabated possibilities for the future. They live together. One is the awareness of death and deadness and loss, and the other one is the awareness of possibility and recreation and living on, This is really, really important here, because we are all living with prolonged uncertainty on a global level. On a global level. Nobody has the right answer. Nobody has the right way for dealing with this. It's the amalgamation of all the things that we are doing that hopefully will keep us going and will keep us resourceful and resilient and hopeful. Resiliency needs diversity. Don't try to create unity in this moment. Try to make space for the difference that is living inside of you and between you, both and. I'm going to take another breath. I feel like these days I'm so revved up when I'm talking. It's like I have a lot I want to say, but I also know that there's a piece of it that is somewhat anxiety driven for me as well, you know. So keep writing, keep sending your questions as I'm talking. Keep sending this on to your friends as you're listening, you know, whichever way you need to stay connected. And let's think for a moment about what to do, you know. So, and actually, instead, even before I talk about what to do, yeah, I don't know that there have been questions sent my way yet. So, when I think about what to do in this particular moment, I'm thinking here are a few very important things. One of them actually came in a conversation that I had with my colleagues John and Julie Gottman, you know, where we often talk about the appreciation, the need to actually, you know, see the positive in what's happening around us. But we living in distress at this moment, a distressed situation and a distress in a relationship can often make it so that we are emphasizing the negative, being more critical, and taking the positive for granted. So in this moment where we have raw nerves like this, it really goes a long way to notice everything that the other person is doing. It's very easy to notice the stuff that's just like in front of me at my feet, the cup that wasn't put away, the shoes that are, you know, all of that. But if we can also really make a concerted effort to notice the positive, and the beauty of what they were highlighting for me was this: don't just speak to, this is a thanks for doing the dish or the dishes, it's always plural, thanks for doing the dishes, but actually to say that was very thoughtful of you, that was very kind, that was very generous. If you turn the behavior into a trait of the other person, so that you're not just talking about what they did, but about who they are, that will be enormously calming and soothing. Everyone at this moment needs that kind of balm as much as we can. So I'm talking about people who are in the same space, but I think you can expand this, you know, broadly. You know, it's an interesting way that we have a way of asking these days to people, how are you? You know, check in. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for sending me this note. Just kind of this kinder version of ourselves with each other, you know. And in the department that I was talking about, how we're going to have to build boundaries and dissolve boundaries, let me say a thing about each. I think the dissolving of boundaries that I have found really interesting is I've had conversations in the last week that I would never have had otherwise. A friend of mine asked me to talk with her young child. The mother of the girlfriend of one of my sons asked to speak with me. It's like suddenly these conversations are taking place. You know, I was talking with the husband of another friend. Use the community. If you are alone at home trying to convince your kids to do the homework, don't. Just ask another mother who has had to have challenges, because we are often much better with other people's kids, with other people's partners, you know, when it's not our own story. And this reaching out to the community is an essential piece of relational health and mental health at this moment. You know, everybody's living similar versions of this, so don't worry. For even friends who don't have kids, you don't have to have kids in order to talk with somebody who has kids. It's just people who know who have access to your family and to the people that surround you. So this piece of broadening, get help, get support, get other people to get through. You know, you want to talk to your adult child of something that they're not being careful about. Make sure that one of your friends who you know they trust and who they have connection with gets to talk to them, you know, so that you're not alone trying to deliver the entire protective system to the people that surround you. And on the other side, the creation of boundary, you're going to need self-soothing as well. You can't talk anymore. It's perfectly fine to say, I need to go upstairs. I need to go into my room. I need to put my headphones on. I can't at this moment, you know, respond to you. And then be the one who comes back to respond, you know, so that you can say, not now, not available, but then commit to being the one who comes back so that you don't keep the other person waiting. It's better to say, I have nothing left to give at this moment. I can't talk another minute. I need a few moments by myself. All of that is really, really important. It's the creation of a boundary, you know, with somebody who is at the same table as you sometimes, you know. Hold on one second. I am actually going to ask for someone to be quieter. Hold on. Excuse me. You have to be quiet. I'm in the middle of a webinar. Sorry. Relax. That's my boundary. Because I hear everything. Like many of you, it's like we hear everything. You know, I'm on social media actually doing a webinar right now. Would you like to join us? I'm talking about boundaries as we speak. So, how, excuse me. So, back with you. Because I've just transgressed a boundary myself, because there are paintings here on the table and I have just put them one on top of the other and they are still wet. So you see, this is parallel process, people, completely. Boundaries. Know to modulate your own as well. So if you realize that you have worked nonstop, you don't have commuter time, you don't have any space in between that delineates and demarcates, think boundaries. And we're going to go back into this for a little bit more. So here's the thing. What has been very helpful for me, and I've recommended it to quite a lot of people, I think they've liked it very much as well, is to do stress tests, you know, emotional, mental stress tests. Wake up, you just think for a minute, you know, anxiety level, calm level, stress level, playful level, humor level, where am I at? Just take a few markers for yourselves and just do your own stress test. If you're with somebody, stress test. If I notify someone that I'm in anxiety level 9, or that I am in irritability level 7, or I'm into snapping level 10, or any of those, you know, there's a variety of them. It means leave me alone right now. Leaves me, I can't engage, you know. If it's, I am in focus level 10, I mean, I have to do this, and I go and I say to my partner, please, I'm on social, I'm doing a webinar right now as we speak. That's a boundary. That's boundary, that's stress level, that's cueing in the other person, that's letting them know what you can and cannot deliver at this moment, where you can engage with them and not. And having these conversations when you go to bed, when you wake up, are actually really, really useful. In then taking them a step further, which is to actually have a chat about, well, tell me more about it. And then not to argue with it, not to rationalize it, not to justify it, not to try to fix it, just really the ability to listen to it. You can do it as a friend, you can do it as a family member, you can do it as a partner. It's actually creates a real boundary. If I talk to you and you are plain listening to me, and then you just validate it for me, and then I experience myself not as lonely because I'm able to share it with you, but I'm also keeping it to myself. It doesn't have to be your experience. It's not a shared experience. It's my experience that I'm communicating with you, that you are holding space for, that you're validating for me. And I'm in that moment at the same time with myself and with you, inside myself and with you. By the way, not that different from what we experience in sexuality. I make love to you, I'm inside myself, inside of you, with me. That back and forth like that, we can experience as much in our sexual intimacy as we can experience in any other form of intimate and erotic intimacy. Which leads me actually to think about a question that many of you have asked me as well, which is how do I create mystery or distance when living on top of each other? You know, this is Mating in Captivity, the quarantine version, right? The sequel, the COVID sequel. The interesting thing is this: physical space is limited, but our imaginative capacities are infinite. And we know that. We know that we can imagine our erotic world, our love world, our intimate world way beyond what is in front of us. We can imagine ourselves younger, we can imagine ourselves with hair, we can imagine ourselves with confiscated breasts, we can imagine ourselves the way we used to be when we were young together, we can imagine lovers we have. Our capacity for imagination goes way beyond the boundaries and the limitations of our physical reality. And once you have that, then I'm going to invite you to really be a lot more playful, you know. So I'm going to give you another personal example. I don't usually tell you as much about my life, but here we go. You know, I had celebrated my 35th wedding anniversary yesterday, and I went on a date. You know, we both got dressed up, and we both basically went to the living room. It's not like we went very far, but we set it up like we were going to a restaurant, and we opened the entrance door of the house, and then we just literally went back inside and basically pretend. But kids know to play so well, you know, is to make as if, because in this as if, you know, you're not, but you feel as if you are. And that is it what enabled us to experience the mystery, the playfulness, the unknown, the erotic imagination that accompanied basically celebrating on an anniversary. Then, you know, there's this fantastic little video of Chin Chin, you know, so it's Chin Chin, and this guy is doing it with the mirror, basically to say, to toast with everyone. So we toasted with a lot of people that some of them were online and some of them were not there. We allowed ourselves to think that we were having a party of sorts, you know. This is one tiny example. I invite you all to just think about what are the multiple ways that you can create boundaries between the normal day and the anniversary, between, you know, intimate time and work time, between solo time and couple time, between practical time and playful time, between the mundane and between the sublime. And that boundary at this moment, we're going to have to invent with our minds, with our imagination. It's not going to be with our physical locations, but it can be really interesting. And I wish you all to send me all those things that you have tried. I want to do a kind of an erotic chest, a chest of ideas of how to eroticize your relationship at this moment. And we can share it amongst ourselves, because I'm sure some of you are going to have incredible ideas. It's also about writing to each other love notes, even while you're sitting at the same kitchen table, for that matter, so that the texts are not only practicalities, but things that actually just continue to play with each other, to cultivate that sense of otherness, that distance, that I'm watching you, you know. You can do a lot of pretend game. You can do a lot of, you know, playing different characters, role play, whatever you want. This does not diminish because you've been together the whole day, but you have to really know that you're stepping into a different zone. And changing names works for a lot of people. Changing language works for a lot of people, because they're clear delineators. But clothes, or it just understand that a role is not just defined by the physicality of where it takes place, but by how you act in it. So if you change the script, you change the way you act, you change your role, and you change the story that is being played out between the two of you in that moment. No? So, am I talking a mile a minute, right? It feels like at this moment. Work and a home. Many of you have been asking, how do you separate work from home? So, we are distancing ourselves from the places that we usually go. And the way that we typically live, which is highly localized, is to the different parts of our identity, is not possible at this moment. And it's important to name it, to make that be really clear. We don't have the home, we don't have the commute, we don't have the office, we don't have the school, we don't have the bar, we don't have the gym, we don't have the dance studio, we don't have the recording studio. It's all in one space. And that, knowing that, we don't have the ability to differentiate. And it is what it is. It is what it is, people. There's not an answer to everything, and not everything here has an easy solution. But we will find ways to build these contextual shifts into our day. And one of the things that we know is that people are really struggling with that. It's bleeding into it. Instead of eating really at home, people are eating at their computer as if work is at home, which it is, but the home is still there too. So I can't emphasize it enough. It's the delineation in time and in space. If you're going to eat, clear the dining room table or the kitchen table, make it the dining room table. If you're going to take a break, sit somewhere else. In between two activities, get up. If you can go outside, take a walk. But it's about creating demarcations. Otherwise, you will find that you are exhausted at the end of the day. Many people describe this exhaustion, whether you are alone, whether you are with partner or with family. And then talk with people about space. What is the meaning of space? What is the change in the space? Don't just negotiate space. Have a conversation about the meaning of space. I think that you will find that people have a lot of different things to say about it. And this is a unique time to actually inquire and explore the meaning of a lot of things that we usually don't explore. We just live in them and we don't really think about it because it's part of kind of, the daily life. So what is space? What does it represent for you? What's been the biggest challenge for you? What are you struggling with? What have you actually discovered that's really interesting that you didn't know, that maybe you need a lot less space, that, what does it mean for you? So the conversation about space, and with a lot of people, you can do this from very young on, what does it mean not to have your own room alone? What does it mean that, that your mother and father are doing all these things? I'm going to school too. If you're going to school, I go to my school in a way, right next to you. Same with your colleagues. One of the most interesting thing about boundaries at this moment when I work is that sometimes the only thing that really separates my home life from my work life is my mute button. So for you too, the mute button goes open and suddenly you hear the dogs, the children, the other people who are all around. My husband going into the kitchen right now, mute button. It's phenomenal. And I think that there's something actually very beautiful in suddenly entering each other's homes in ways that we never knew. You're going to be working with people, you're in their home, ask them, who are you with? Who else is there with you? Does anybody come to visit? Do you take care of anyone around you on your floor? Don't pretend it's not there. Pretend, respond to what's really there, which is that you are often in the intimacy of people's homes. Some of us actually need to work on our bed, with a laptop like that. Acknowledge it. Don't pretend it's not there. And if you need to take a moment to go and take care of a dog, of a cat, of a child, of a person that's knocking at your door, just make it obvious. I think that to try to apologize about it and then to feel angry about the fact that it's happening and then to feel bad about being angry and then having shame kind of come on top of that. We have enough other things that we really need to deal with at this moment. Really, we are inside each other's intimate spaces in a way that we have never been. It's as if we're all doing doctor's home visits. I do home visits. Another question that many of you have been asking is, how do you manage conflict and tension when you're with your partner the whole day, the whole evening, the whole night, And I think that the first thing again is to acknowledge the feelings that come with the massive disruption. It's easy to blame the other person because they're right next to you. It's kind of the obvious thing to do, instead of really, you know, how are we struggling to maintain our sense of continuity? You know, frustrations are bound to happen. It's a given. This is not your problem. This is created by a situation. Acute stress, prolonged uncertainty will create frustration. It will create irritability. It will create impulsivity. It's a given. Just normalize this. And for some of you, it will really highlight the fact that you have an anger issue and it's time to go deal with this. That too, you know. But see, first of all, the things for what they are. And then if the tension gets too much, have a code word. Have a code word that has to be deployed when one of you is just, you know, is going to say something that you're going to regret saying. So shut the fuck up, as we say in simple English. Quite don't, because you will regret. And don't confuse the fact that because you are trapped by COVID, that you are trapped by your relationship. They're not one and the same, but they will make your relationship suddenly, you know, appear very differently. And it is a distorted view. It can be sometimes a heightened clarity, but it is a heightened clarity in a particular context. And that context brings its own distortions as well. So be very, very clear about that, you know. And I am going to go see what's in my chat box. Oh God, people, there's a full chat box suddenly. I hadn't even looked at it. Okay, let me look at it with you. How do you deal with family stress when we can't get outside? Best ways to help support a partner who is high anxiety during this pandemic. Great. Okay, let me take a few of these. Support your parents living in another country who are handling this situation difficult. What do you think about how our relationships with our devices, tablets is going? Okay, there's a different levels here. Okay, let me start with, if you can't go outside, it is really, really, really tough. And what I'm going to say is everything I'm going to say is going to work sometimes for some of you and not at other times. Let's just think of it like that. There is no good answer here, okay? But if you cannot go outside at all, I'll tell you, I do have a personal reference that I often think about because I grew up with so many people who had been hidden during World War II. I lived with people who then went, you know, and who were hidden in haystacks and in closets and in holes for a year and a half. And now I think, oh, I have so many questions. You know, I would have wanted to ask that question to those people. You know, I think what helps is to know that you're doing this to protect yourself and your loved ones. That probably more than anything else. It's very hard to say this to little kids, but because they don't feel the fear. Whereas when there is war, you feel the fear right away. It's a very difficult thing to see this, to deal with an invisible enemy of sorts, you know. We are afraid. Our children are not afraid because they're basically in their familiar environment. But for those who can understand it, think that the moment you know that you're doing this for survival, it helps. It helps at least a little bit. And then, you know, you try to do as much physical activity inside the house, jumping jacks. If you have a rope, jump rope, do weights, do push-ups, do whatever you can to bring energy into your bodies. You know, listen to music that soothes you, look at screens that have, you know, soothing images as well, not just our Zoom images and stuff. It's really challenging to, you know, get air, open the window, just open the window, see the sky if you can, and just look up for a while. It's every ways that we know to stay connected, but it is tough. And I am not going to be able to say something that is going to make this not difficult, you know. When you deal with partners with high anxiety, I think it depends. The easiest thing is if you have someone and they're next to you, because some of you don't have your partners next to you. Some of us want to be touched when we are really anxious, and some of us can't tolerate it. If they can, holding is probably the most important thing. Not talking, not trying to reassure, but just holding and just saying, this is tough for you. Come here. You need a real hug, and hold for a while until they let go. If you can do that, the physical thing is really it's the thing that's going to calm the nervous system the most. Water. Suggest that they go take a shower and just stand in the water for a while. Music, poetry, art. I mean, there are other things than just the straightforward conversation. Don't start giving them statistics necessarily. That is not, for most people, what works. Have them do something that relaxes them. Sometimes it's cooking, sometimes it's eating what you've cooked, sometimes it's looking at pictures of good times in your life. It's things like that. And the first thing I would say is ask them, what helps you? What can I do that helps you? And what can you do that helps you? With the parents who are abroad, I mean, look, with all of us who are not with family, or with all of us who are to all kinds of immigration status that didn't allow us to leave wherever we were, it is similar to what happens in times of war, right? It's like you try to connect. We have these devices that if I had done a talk with you a year ago, a month ago, I would have talked about how they keep us apart. Right now, I'm talking about how they're keeping us connected. And because we can see each other, and because of the voice, there's never been more phone calls. The return of the phone call, the return of the voice is so important. And the voice, by the way, is also very important in calming people, in dealing with the anxieties. But you check, and you don't check just on the level of, have you taken care of this? Have you spoken to so-and-so? There is that level of conversation, but then there is the deeper level of conversation. How are you? What kept you up last night? Have you been able to find comfort in certain things? These kind of questions. Don't be scared to go a little deeper. Nobody is going to regret it. And if they don't want to, they'll push you, they'll tell you stop, they'll hold you at a distance. But you don't just feel like you have to stay shallow surface. What do you think about how our relationship with phone? I have moved in with someone special I met 5 weeks ago. Yes. How can we still enjoy the dating phase being at home? Look, the dating phase, it's going to be a different dating phase. You are experiencing something very powerful and very intense together very soon. You're not going through the normal stages. That just is. Now, play with that. You're going to discover each other much deeper, much faster. You suddenly are talking about your respective families, about where you come from, about your communities of origin, things that many times people don't do at all in the dating. Most first dates are often just kind of a job interview to begin with. So, but how to keep the dating alive? It's because you are discovering so many things about each other. That is it's not just as in, I'm getting all ready for you because I'm going out with you tonight. You can do that in your house. You can pretend you're in a club in your house. You can put music and go dancing together. You can do lots of dating things. But you also have a whole other kind of dating that is quite interesting. It's like we're in quarantine together. Who are you? All these things I would never have known about you, or it would have taken me a year to find all of these things out about you. And that level of dating, if you want, that comes from suddenly being together so soon, I think is going to actually reveal some very interesting stuff. So approach it with curiosity, with mischief, yeah, that's it. Curiosity and mischief and playfulness. Those three will take you along with improvisation, don't go right into a couple that's been together for 5 years, or avoid it. You're gonna cook for each other, make each other's beds, wash each other's clothes. You're gonna see how roles are emerging and play with that. So, that will actually maintain a level of dating for you. Separateness and increased desire in a relationship when you're in a room with someone 24/7. Lauren, this is Lauren's question. Same thing, Lauren. You have got to use your imagination. And I'm not talking imagination just in terms of how to have sex. I'm talking about the erotic imagination that allows you to go outside of this immediate reality that's in front of you. Why don't you start writing a story together? Why don't you start filming each other? Why don't you start calling each other, even though you're sitting next to each other in the same room? But you have to go playful and outside of the boundaries of reality. That is what people have done forever. This thing inside of us, this is not one that you can restrict. Now you're going to say it's harder to imagine things when you're, well, no, this is when you want your imagination to actually kick in. This is exactly why you want to invite your thoughts, and your playfulness. And I saw a couple, they got all costumed they live in one room, they got costumed, and she's giving birth at the end of the month, and they were literally dancing together they created a mini Burning Man, just in their living room for 20 minutes. But all of these things will bring back pleasure in the midst of crisis, which we will have a whole episode about, actually. I have 5 college students finishing school online. When do you think young people in this age group need to, where are you? Oh God, I lost you. About how to adjust to entirely. Is there a room for pleasure? Where are you? I lost you. I just lost you.
I can read the question.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Nick.
The question was, what do you think young people in this age group need to hear right now? And that's from Beth.
But you're talking about this college. I'll tell you, very interestingly, I had heard the story of this kid who was doing a political economy class, and they were learning, the 40s. And at one point, somebody finally raised their hand in class and said, there's enough political economy going on right now. Can we maybe talk about what we are experiencing? And for the first time, the whole class was like, awake and attentive. So I think that for the young people at this moment, the 20-year-olds, there's so much. I think they actually are realizing a level of interdependence that in the West has been absent. A profound level of interdependence, the importance of connection, the rediscovery of the voice. They want to talk. They're talking in ways that us boomers have done for a long time. The fear of what is this freaking world that they are going to be living in, that they need to find a job in, that they, this is going to profoundly change an entire generation. No doubt, no doubt. And the notion that they, in a way, we are asking the younger people to sacrifice themselves by staying home, even though, yes, the coronavirus attacks young people too, but by vast majority, it's older people, me and up, and, we have not necessarily been that generous with the younger people. We have not given the universal health care. We have not lowered the school debt. We have not dealt with the estate tax. We actually are asking the young people to really sacrifice a certain sense of future for them, for us. And that too needs to be acknowledged. That actually they also have the right to make the decision about if they want to live with their girlfriends or boyfriends at this moment, rather than be with their families, that too. There's an enormous amount of conversations about what is the responsibility of these young people to their families, from the family to the young people, and from them to the community. This morning I was talking with the mother whose son is doing Meals on Wheels in Brooklyn. And, basically, and another son, so one mother actually, I was doing this group, and one son is doing it already. And what can the parents say? He's doing it. And the other group, mother, wanted to tell the young people, don't do it. Or if you do it, you can, but you can't come back home because you're living with us. So you have multitude of situations like this, of negotiating maturity, age, a sense of future, who owns reality, and all of that. That's what goes in my head when I'm talking with my 2 young sons, for that matter. Couples who are quarantined apart, it's really everything that you do. I think what's really interesting, was actually something that Nick brought up in our conversation yesterday, is not just to do the chit chat at the end of the day, kind of, or a few times during the day, about how everyone is doing, but actually leave the camera on and coexist. Invite each other into your physical spaces. work together, even though you're in separate homes, if you don't need to talk to others, or even do and just so I can see you the whole day as if we were actually together. That imaginative construct is also very, very helpful and is much better in keeping people connected. And I think I am gone over time, Nick. Is that correct? But we do have next week, and we have
Yeah.
weeks
So
after that.
if you check on, so I would, we're going to cover a lot of these different issues and questions. And so there's a little bit of an outline in the chat if you want to go over, the topics that you proposed for the coming weeks.
Yes, but in the chat you said, okay, so where are they? I'm going to do one more session on the relational challenges and the multiple roles that we are experiencing all at once. So that and it's going to be a lot driven by your questions as well. And I think we're going to do both sides. What do you do when you're fighting more, and how to deal with that, and how to create, fun in the midst of all of this as well, how to bring humor, how to find ways to soothe yourself and to comfort yourself. We're going to do a whole session on finding pleasure in the midst of crisis. It's really okay. You are actually allowed to be sexual with your partners if you've both been quarantined for a while. You can be intimate. You can touch each other. It's totally safe. And then you have yourself as well. So you may not be able to go out to others. There's challenges for the non-monogamous. There are challenges for the polyamorous, but for the monogamous, for once, you actually may have an advantage for a moment. And then we have another one, and that one, Nick, what is the name of the one we're doing on week 3? You have?
So we have a session.
How to, yes, the loneliness, right?
Well, we have a session on prolonged uncertainty and anticipatory grief.
Right.
And then videos on being quarantined apart and then coping with loneliness.
Great. So quarantined apart, I think I began talking a little bit, but we'll have I'll do a number of small videos for you as well, so that I can kind of answer some of these things as we go. Same with coping with the loneliness. I have a lot I want to tell you about that. And the prolonged uncertainty and the grief. I want to talk with you about grief. I want to talk about that sense of loss that we have. I want to talk with you about the existential experience that we are having, not just the practical and the relational, but also the existential. And I am not going to even start, because otherwise I'll do it right now, and I shouldn't. But meet me next week, 3 p.m. EST, on Facebook. Register in advance, estherperel.com/lockdown. And let's continue the conversation. And best to all of you.
Esther, if you just click the more button, then we can end the